Hi and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2013, it's a Hyundai Accent, and the customer complaint is that there's a squeaking, like a loud pitch squeaking noise coming from the left front wheel when you drive the car. Once I lifted it up on the lift and spun the wheel, it's pretty much a clean-cut issue. What it is, it's the indicator on the back of the brake pad is touching into the rotor. So I'll bring you up there. I'm going to show you how to check it to make sure that there's no other issues with the slide pins, because the slide pins sometimes freeze and cause the brakes to stay applied. Let me just back up a little bit. This also has 54,000 miles on the car, and this is the second set of brakes. So it's crucial that you make sure that the slide pins are sliding. Sorry about that. So it's crucial that you make sure that the slide pins are sliding the way they're supposed to, because if they stay applied too long, they're actually going to wear down the brake pads a lot quicker than normal. We are going to change the rotors because, as I said, this is the second brake job, and they did have the rotors resurfaced the last time. And if you can resurface rotors, usually you can do them one time and then you throw them out. So, all right, I'm going to bring you up there. I'm going to show you how to check everything and then how to proceed to get this job done. So let's get up there and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, now this is what your brakes in the front here look like. And the pieces I was telling you about, the slide pins, are these pieces right here. It's very important to make sure that these are in good condition. Not only are these in good condition, but it's very important that the brake hardware is in good condition also, and that they don't bind up the shoes and the pads and keep them from releasing. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here with a small screwdriver or pry bar, and we're going to pull this back this way to make sure that the piston pushes back in, and to make sure these slide pins are okay right here. So we are going to take this rotor off. We're going to take these screws out here and here to remove it, and then in the back of the bracket over here we're going to remove that bolt back in there. It's a 17 millimeter. There's one up here, and there's also one down the bottom over here. So all right, let me get set up and then we'll come back and we're going to continue with it. But let me give you an example of what tools you're going to need. You're going to need a ratchet with a 17 millimeter socket to take the mounting bracket off the car. You're going to need a socket that's a 14 millimeter in which to remove the caliper from the car. And you may need an 18 millimeter thin wall, a very thin wrench like this. And the reason I say that is because sometimes when you try to remove this bolt right here, when you try to take that out, this rotates right here. So if that's rotating, what you would do is you would put a wrench on it like this here, like that, so that you could actually hold it so you can remove the bolt in the back right over here. Well, we'll see how that goes. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it don't. And like I said, that's an 18 millimeter, but you'll need a very thin socket. If you don't have an 18 millimeter, you can probably get on there with a 3/4. It'll do the same thing. It'll be just a little bit sloppy on there. You are going to need a small pry bar or a screwdriver in which to push the piston back in, and you're going to need a driver like this to get the rotor off of the car. Now, sometimes the bolts are actually really tight, and you would take a drift like this, a metal drift like this, and you would just strike it a couple of times. But I'm going to show you how to do that now. So, all right, let's get started on it then. Okay. Now, remember, I said sometimes these screws are pretty tight right here and you can't get them out. You would take a metal drift like this, metal or brass, whatever you have, and you just take a hammer and you hammer it pretty firmly a couple of times. And then what you would do is you get in here with your screwdriver and you can take them off. I say 90% of the time they come right out without a problem. Don't lose these, you're going to need them again. Now, if by chance it does not come out and you need to get this out, you could buy a tool like this. It's called a driver. You could put it on here like this, and you put it on, and, well, actually it came right out. But you would actually just strike this in the back with a hammer, and you can actually loosen it up without any real problems. But as I said, this one actually came right out. So if you If you just hit it a couple of times with that metal drift, you'll see it'll come right out. All right, next thing we're going to do now is we're going to check this to make sure that the slide pins are working properly. And the way you do that is you get in here with the screwdriver and you bring it through right over here. And you slowly pull on this and just keep constant pressure to push that piston back into the bore. You see how it's sliding in? And you just reposition your screwdriver or your pry bar so that it doesn't slip out on you. As you can see, the piston is pushed back in all the way. Then you just take your caliper, you slide it back and forth, and you see how it slides? So we know our slide pins are working properly. Let me reposition this. And you see how that slides back and forth, so you know that your slide pins are working properly here. All right, next thing we do is we're going to take out those bolts in the back. Those are the 14 millimeters. And you break both of them loose before you take it. Before you take one out, you break them both and make sure they're both loose. Now, you see how these came out without a problem? Remember what I told you, if it doesn't, you get on here with a wrench like this and you hold it, because sometimes you'll try to turn this and the whole slide pin rotates. If that's the case, you just hold it on here with this wrench like that and you can unscrew it. That's not the case here. They came right out. So once you break them loose, you can just unscrew it. They come right out. Don't lose these because you're going to need them again to put it back together. Then you're going to relocate your caliper out of the way. You just take a piece of wire, a hanger, whatever you have, and just locate it up and out of the way, just like that, so it's not bothering you while it's hanging by this rubber hose. It's not supposed to hang by the hose. Now I'm going to take this brake pad. Now this brake pad is actually pretty tight inside this mounting bracket, so it's probably going to be a rust issue, but this is the indicator I was telling you about. You see how that has a little bit of a shine on the end of that? That indicator was actually coming in contact with the back part of the rotor, but what it was doing is it was touching in just like this here, and it gives you that squealing. Hear that noise? That's the squealing noise that you get from it. Okay, so we're just going to pull this one out of here too. Okay. Next thing is in the back of the rotor here. Remember I told you about those 17 millimeters? I'll bring you in there, I'll show you what they look like. Okay, right here you take this one out and this one out. They unscrew right out of there, and then we'll remove that mounting bracket. Now you notice I'm using the ratchet that's not flexible on the head. Sometimes a little bit easier getting in here with a ratchet that doesn't flex with bolts that are very tight, and these are pretty tight. And once you have them both broken loose, then you can just take the mounting bracket bolts out. Again, don't lose them because you're going to need to reuse these again. And now this rotor is no good. We're not going to reuse it, so you can just bang it from the back a couple of times and it pops right out. Or you can just hit it right here and it does the same thing. We'll just take it off. Alright, now I just want to point this out here. You see in the back right here, you have to make sure that this part here is clean and that there's no rust on here whatsoever. If there's the slightest bit of rust, you'll need to clean this up with an abrasive disc or sandpaper or something to get that cleaned off. All right, so let me grab some brake cleaner and we're going to clean that rotor before we put it on. Okay. I just want to point this out here. All of these rotors come from the store. They have an oily residue on here to keep it from rusting while it's in the store. So what you're basically going to do is you're just going to spray it with some brake cleaner, both sides. You just take a rag, whatever you have, and just clean it off. If you get a little bit of oil from your hands on there, it's not a big deal. It's not going to make any difference. You put it on like that, line these 2 screws up. And then you can put these 2 screws in here to hold the rotor. It'll hold the rotor in place while you're working. Okay, so now the rotor's on, it's nice and tight. Now, next thing I'm going to show you is, you know what, I'm going to bring you over here so you can watch what I'm doing. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out the, where you going, huh? Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out the hardware that's actually right here. We're going to take them out. And the way you do that is you just get in here like this with a screwdriver, a pry bar, whatever you have, and push that out like that. Same thing here. Now, you want to make sure that this area right here is nice and clean here, that there's no rust in here. If there is rust, you can take a file to it, file it just a little bit, or sandpaper and clean it up a little bit. This, it's a little bit dirty, but there's nothing on here, no rust or anything, so we're not going to do anything with that. All right, we take our hardware kit and you put it over the top like this, where it previously came off like that, and you push it in. You make sure your clips are locked in right here, and you're good. All the way down, and you can see that's in place. All right? Now we're going to do the same thing right here. Over the top just like that. And again, push it down and lock it in. Very important that you push these pins in here so that they're down all the way, which they are. All right. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to use your synthetic brake grease now. You're going to take out each one of the slide pins. You're not going to take them out, you're just going to pull them out. Take a little bit of the synthetic brake grease. We're going to clean off the residue that's on there from previously. And you just put a little bit on here like this. All right? You put the pin back in here, just turn it around so it lubricates everything, and you push it in place. Same thing on this one. Clean it off. A little bit of brake lubricant on here like this. And then you take this and you put the pin back in here. Make sure it pushes all the boot pops right back up onto there. That's very important. See, it pops right up. And now they slide nice and easy, see? Okay. Next thing you're going to do, every place that the brake pad is going to touch, you lubricate. Okay? Now, brake pads are left side and right side. So I'm going to show you this now. You see this brake pad here? This brake pad has the indicator up on top right there. So this one is the correct brake pad. But as you can see, you see this brake pad? That looks like it's the right one, but actually the indicator is on the opposite side. See, here's the indicator, and the indicator's over here. So this is not the right one. This brake pad is the correct brake pad because, as you can see, the indicators are in the correct location. See? Now, you can either put the brake pads in here, or you can put them in on the car, depending on how they push in. This one I'm going to put in here, just because it's going to be a little bit easier doing it here than on the car. So you put it in here like this. Okay. And you'll notice now the brake pad slides nice and easy in there, the way it's supposed to. Now you can either put the outer one in here, or you can do it on the car itself, whatever you want to do. I'm going to put them in here. And that's it. Our brake pads are in and ready to go on. All right, so let me turn you around, and we're going to continue now up on the car. But first we're going to change our gloves. All right, now what you do is you just take your caliper, mount the mounting bracket, and you put it up into its location like this. Squeeze your brake pads together so they don't pop out. And then you can catch the bolts in the back. In the mounting bracket. Now before you tighten them up, you're going to catch both of them first, top and bottom. And then once you've got them both caught, then you can go ahead and you can tighten them up all the way. Okay, nice and tight. Now, let's take our caliper over here. We're just going to turn this here for a second. And I just want to see if this is going to fit over the top of it first. It's not. Okay. Sometimes this piston does not push back in all the way. Sometimes this piston does not push in all the way. If that's the case, you would take a tool like this or a similar tool to push that piston back in. And the way you do that is you put in one of the brake pads in here like this, and one of the pads like this, and then this tool goes in there like that, and you tighten this up, and you'll see it pushing that piston back in all the way. Sometimes you can push them in all the way with that screwdriver or pry bar. In this case, we couldn't. All right, and once that piston's pushed all the way in, then we can take our tool back off. Take our brake pads out. Take some more of our synthetic brake grease. And every place that the piston is going to touch or the brake pad is going to touch, you put a thin bead of the silicone on there. It's going to touch here, so we're going to do it here and here as well. So here and wherever the other pad touches. And now you put this back on. Now, make sure that your brake hose here is not twisted. That's very important. This brake hose cannot be twisted. Put it over the top like this. And now you catch both of your bolts in the back, like that. And after you catch them, then you can tighten it up. Nice and tight. Now, if by chance you were going to try to tighten these up here, hang on. Okay, if you were trying to tighten these up and they were just spinning, then you would take your wrench and you put it in here. Like that to hold it, and then you would tighten it up so that the slide pin doesn't rotate. That's not the case here. It actually turned and tightened up really well. So that's it. So let me take my gloves off and we'll recap what we did and how we got this done. Okay. Okay, we put our screws back in the rotor here to hold the rotor back in place. We made sure that the surface underneath here was nice and clean and that the surface had no rust on it. We put our mounting bracket back on and we tightened up those bolts here and down on the bottom over here, those 17 millimeters, so that the mounting bracket is tight. We also tightened up those 14 millimeter bolts in the back here and also down here. We made sure that our slide pins here were not just spinning when we tightened it, which we made sure is nice and tight. We put our new hardware on and we lubricated every place that the brake pad is going to touch. That's it, our job is done. We're going to go to the other side now. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other side and we'll get this job wrapped up and out the door. Remember, pump your brake pedal up before you take the vehicle out for a test drive, because you need to reseat that piston right inside there. You need to have that piston push back out into the brake pad. So make sure you pump the brake pedal a couple of times before you drive it. That's it. We're all done. All right. As always, thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, send me an email. I'll be more than happy to talk to everybody about anything. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.